Welcome back to Mountain Connections. Now, we are heading into not only holiday season, but election season. So here's a quick tip about early voting.
In fact, early voting day is coming up on a Friday. I had a great conversation all about this, especially about getting young voters out to the polls. Let's take a look.
Following a record-setting early voter turnout in the 2020 presidential election, MTV is helping battleground states and college campuses raise awareness for early voting. Today, we have two individuals joining us to talk about Vote Early Day 2022, which is Friday, October 28th. Right now, we have MTV Entertainment's Director of Social Impact, Vaughan Bagley, and Central Michigan University student Katie Ellison. Thanks, both of you, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Vaughan, let's start with you. Tell me more about Vote Early Day.
Yes, so Vote Early Day is a holiday that we co-founded in 2020 to empower Americans to understand what their early voting options are. We saw that early voting was seeing a rise even prior to the pandemic. More than 40% of Americans voted early in 2016. But oftentimes when we looked at why they were not voting early, it was because they didn't know that they could or didn't know what their voting early options looked like. And so Vote Early Day is really just a marker on the calendar where we can make sure that people are aware of their early voting options. They can cast their ballots on that day in most states, and they can celebrate voting, celebrate the elections. And so it's an exciting opportunity to celebrate a little early and make it an election season rather than just an election day.
And Katie, you're a university student. What made you decide to get involved in what's happening on your campus?
Absolutely. And I think what got me involved, I really didn't become super passionate about voting specifically until my junior year of college, and I'm a senior now. So I've had a couple elections to really realize the power of young people voting is something that really has stuck out to me. And I've also identified voting as something I'm really passionate about because one, I think it makes our country a little bit better. There's power in us using our voices, fulfilling our civic duties by voting, but also I felt like I couldn't advocate for any other issues in good faith without first addressing voting and making sure as many people are voting as possible. So on our campus, that's really how I got involved. And we're celebrating early voting, as Vaughan said, all season long. We've been really planning since the spring, all throughout the summer, and now in the fall, we're really dedicating this entire semester to making sure students have voting plans, they understand the power of their voices, and they're really ready for election day.
And Vaughan, as you mentioned, there's some really great events going on around the country. I'd love to hear more about those.
Yes, so we are partnering with the Detroit Pistons in Detroit on an awesome Vote Early game day on Friday. So there'll be a pregame festival that happens outside the Little Caesars Arena. There'll be a Vote Early halftime show with T Grizzly as a headliner during the game. Philadelphia City Hall, there'll be a circus for Vote Early Day where people will be able to watch the performers while also getting early voting information. There are a number of events happening across college campuses, from Emory University's March to the Polls to what CMU is doing for their Spooktacular. So there's a lot of awesome on the ground community events happening to celebrate Vote Early Day. And then we also at MTV Entertainment, one of our brands is Comedy Central, and we have actually a Comedy Central Stand Up and Vote Early special that will be airing tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be really fun. There's a lot of comics that'll be talking about the absurdities of our democracy, and we'll get to laugh with them while also getting some good voter information at voteearly.org.
Katie, why do you think it's so important for young people, such as college students, young adults, to get involved in the voting process?
I think there's a ton of reasons why, and I love that question. A lot of young people do say, "Oh, politics just isn't for me," but in fact, it affects them whether they vote or not. So that's the first thing I say, and it might not affect you now, or as a college student, you may not feel like politics affects you now, but I promise you one day you'll probably feel it, whether that's in your career. If you want to be a teacher, snow days are decided by elections versus everything from inflation and so many other policies. Everything ties back to voting and making your voice heard through that process. So that's one thing, as well as with young people, especially understanding that if they start voting now, they'll build those civic engagement habits that will, as studies show, stay with them for the rest of their life if they start now, start understanding and taking a part in this process when they're young, right when they turn 18. As well as young people being a huge voting bloc that is only growing and using their power. We know that young people don't vote most frequently, but there's so many of us. So while we're not a monolith, understanding that we are so powerful and we really do have giant sway in what happens at the local, state, and federal level.
Vaughn, what do you tell people who are maybe frustrated with politics and who feel like their vote doesn't actually make a difference or matter?
In recent years, we've seen that elections have been decided by just a few thousand, if not a few hundred votes. And as Katie alluded to, millennials and Gen Z by 2024 are going to make up almost 45% of the electorate. So your vote does matter. You can look at what's been happening with the Supreme Court. You can look at what's happening in your own state and the laws that are being passed at the state by the state legislature. No matter what side of the aisle that you're on, your vote does matter. And ultimately, it matters not just for you, but it could have huge ramifications for future generations as well. So knowing that elections are decided by such few votes, it should hopefully inspire a lot of people to get out and make sure that the issues that they care about, knowing that those are on the ballot, that the issues they care about are winning at the end of the day, and that they're able to cast their ballots and make their voices heard.
And Katie, how can other college students get involved on their campuses?
I think that's a great question. I know the go-to for a lot of college campuses is starting a student organization related to voting or building a campus-wide coalition that has everybody from Greek life with fraternities and sororities to sports teams to professors in every field on your campus, getting people in a room together and understanding that a lot of the time voting directly relates to universities' mission statements about making us better people who make a difference in the world. Well, one great way to do that is by voting and by working with people who make it easier, like MTV, like Fair Election Center's Campus Vote Project, who my campus has been grateful to work with for a number of years now. And having that support, especially if it doesn't come directly from an institution, having outside support is a really great way for students to get involved and really become engaged and organized on their campuses.
And Vaughan, where can we get more information leading up to Vote Early Day this Friday?
voteearly.org. If you go there, you can put in your zip code and see exactly where you can vote early, what your early voting options are. You can check your registration to make sure that you are registered where you think you're registered, because that's always very important. And then you can also get information about who is on your ballot, who are the candidates all the way up and down the ticket, and what do they stand for? Do they care about the issues that you care about? And so making sure that you are able to not only make it to the ballot box as easily as possible and know where that is, but get there and feel informed and confident about the decision that you're making.
Well, thank you so much, Vaughan Bagley and Katie Ellison, for joining us today. Really appreciate this important information about Vote Early Day, encouragement to get involved in the election, and just overall sentiment that it does make a difference to vote. So appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having us.